Hi, everybody, and welcome back to part two of today's double feature episode of the Cantina Conversations. Obviously,
Or
still.
part one. I'm not doing this bit anymore.
Oh, that's a good bit. But still the Galaxy's number one conversational podcast, and I'm joined still by my two Canadian compadres. Now we've got Jackson on the bottom and DJ on the top left.
As
Because
usual.
Jackson, when you
halfway
left,
through.
you messed everything up. When you
Yeah,
had a
everything
random
switched
accident.
around, but
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you're rolling right into this from our previous episode going through all the news, or if you're just skipping ahead to this one, this is the episode we're going to be talking all about the Mandalorian Chapter 15, The Believer, written and directed by Rick Famuyiwa.
I think it's Famuyiwa. So here's my thing. I'm a believer. Popular song, popularized by Shrek. What is the first line of the chorus of I'm a Believer?
Then I saw her face.
Yeah.
And
I'm a believer.
We saw some faces.
Oh my
didn't
God.
we?
Oh man, look at the symbolism here.
This is what we call paratextual in my world.
How did you dig that one out of there? How did you go from that to that to that?
It just happened, man.
Because that was clearly an epiphany. That was not a planned bit. It just came to you. You're like,
because he said the believer, and then in my head I went, and then I saw, and then like the song, and then I saw the face, and then we'll talk about Mandalorian.
Everyone knows. Second to Star Wars knowledge, Jackson is a
Number one in
lexicon
Shrek.
of Shrek lore.
Actually, I'm a lexicon of monkeys lore.
Ooh,
monkeys.
The band, the monkeys.
I thought you were talking about the
just-
species.
just a reminder to our audience: DJ's a serial killer and does not listen to music.
Right. For a second, I was just like, how can you what do you mean by knowing the lore on monkeys? Isn't that just like science?
Yeah.
What is that?
I'm a big societal lore fan.
Really into the Earth lore?
So
The backstory?
getting into this episode though, it was not too long. It was about 36 minutes in length. But I know you guys are the opposite of me, so we can kind of get into this as we go though. But I thought this episode was actually kind of boring. It just, after the last 4 weeks that we've had, I just don't think that this was a right move on it, because it didn't really do much for me. But we also got way too much Cara Dune for my liking. So I guess the episode here is basically, it starts off at like this prison mining yard.
I thought this was a cool visual.
I would agree. It's also
For a
just
second,
like
I was like, is this Braca, maybe? And then they didn't say anything, so I probably not, but...
And it was also very reminiscent of the prison mine that is featured in Skyrim. But Bill Burr's character is out here doing some work, and then this droid comes up and is like, prisoner, blah, 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 blah. You have been requested by the marshal. And
Bill Burr's like, hey!
Yeah, he's like, hey, I'm working here. And then Cara Dune comes up, and of course we boo her appearance on screen. And she's like, we need your help with something. And he's like, what do I got to do about it? And she's like,
goop.
And then she's like, they just decide they're going to give this episode, Bill Burr's character, a deep backstory. Because she's just like, because you're former Imperial. And I was like, oh, all right. I guess that kind of makes sense why he's the character they carry over from chapter 6. And he's like, yeah, what if I was? I don't want to help out anymore. And then she's like, no, you're helping or else. And he's like, all right, I'm going to help then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty much their conversation. So she brings him up to the slave one, and Boba Fett comes out, thick Fett, with a fresh coat of paint, looking mighty fine.
Do you think he painted it, or do you think he just cleaned it? I couldn't tell. I think it was
painted it.
Yeah,
because like the suit was like damaged and stuff.
I guess,
in the last episode, but
it looks good.
You thought it looked good?
I think when last week when we first saw the thing, I was like, I hope they just leave it as this like disgusting thick fat thing. And then as soon as I saw it in the nice shiny, I was just like, no, that's good. I like it. So
it grew on me, but it looked kind of cheesy at first because it was like too green.
yeah,
It reminded me of that.
I saw it just like on Twitter, like because I can watch the episode in the morning. So I didn't have that guttural reaction at first. I was just like, oh, okay. And then by the time I watched the episode, I was adjusted pretty much.
My thought process was that old Lowe's commercial when they're talking about color matching paint, and it's that girl crying in her room, and she's like, "It's like really green." I don't know if you remember that commercial.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No.
I'll have to see if it's on YouTube at all, but yeah, so and he's like, "Oh, I thought you might have been that other guys that I know."
Hey.
You know what I mean? And then he's like, "Hey, forget about me."
It's the Mando.
And then Din walks down the ramp and he's just like, "Oh, Mando, what's going on?" And so Mando's like, "Hey, I need you to help me track down Moff Gideon's ship." And then Bill Burr is like,
should just be Hondo.
They should. They're pretty similar characters, but so then all of a sudden he's just like, "Oh, you've selected the dialogue option that unlocks the side quest. We have to go to this Imperial mining facility to find the tracking system to Moff Gideon's ship in this Imperial computer."
This is exactly what I said would happen.
Yeah. So they were just like, "All right, well, let's do this." So they fly to this area, and like as they're flying or whatever, they have like some conversations throughout, so Bill Burr can tell some more jokes about how fun Cara Dune sounds and stuff, and they're just like, "I wonder what they're mining here." And then Boba Fett is like, "Oh, they're mining radium, highly volatile, very explosive." And it's like, "Oh, okay." And he's quite knowledgeable for a man that's just been wandering the desert for 5 years. And
I gotta say though, throughout this entire episode, when you just see Boba fight, like he just feels so perfect. Right now, like he is where he should be.
They really did nail that character to make me care.
Yeah, like he just fits right in, and like this show is like quickly becoming like kind of getting a bit of an ensemble, and I think it works.
Yeah,
like just having a crew.
Yeah,
so
it does.
It's awesome. I hope he's just I hope Boba is just Mando's pilot for the rest of this show. I hope that's just what it is. That'd be great.
And the muscle.
Yeah, and like
because he can fight.
He can kill some people. Yeah.
But I like what they've done with Boba so far, to be honest. And then
it's great.
Slave One's still a dumb ship.
So they get to this planet, and they're like, "Well, that's the colony, but how do we get in there?" And then they notice that there's these trucks that are making these deliveries, and they're going through this tunnel and then trying to make it to the ship or whatever. So they're like, "Oh, I got a plan." And they're like, "We're going to hijack one of these trucks, and then we're going to ride in there." And Bill Burr's like, "Well, I don't know about yous, Mando, but we can't be rolling in there with a Mandalorian." And then Cara Dune is like, "Fine, I'll go." And everyone was like, "No, please don't let her go." And he's like, "Nah, Cara, they're going to see your Republic face and you're donezo."
You can't have that much screen time. Like, you can't do this.
And then Boba's like, "I can't go because they might recognize my face."
That was the best part of this show. That was the best part of this entire series so far. He says it very casually too. He's just like, "There's a chance they might recognize me. Not sure."
So then Mando is like, "I'll go." And they're like, "Well, how's this gonna work?" Hey, so they raid into one of the ships that's in this bridge or whatever, and they knock out the two clone trooper pilot, or not clone trooper, but the two trooper pilots that are driving this ship. And then Mando takes off the Beskar and puts on one of these suits. And then Bill Burr's like, "Hey, look at this guy." And so
he looks so skinny.
He does. He looks very tiny in it without the armor. And it's funny is like Din is willing to give up his Beskar to help save the child. So you're kind of getting that implication on like how much Sebastian, aka Grogu, actually is starting to mean to him. Like he hasn't given up that Beskar for anybody since he's gotten it, and for him to be able to swap out completely to a suit where he's not going to be action figure invincible, that's pretty big big character moment right there. So him and Bill are driving in this I can't call him Mayfield, he's just Bill Burr to me because like he's just playing himself. So like they're driving in this truck or whatever, and he's like really drilling Mando's philosophy on the helmet here.
Yeah.
And it's good dialogue, to be
Yeah.
honest, because he's like, so what is it? Like, you can't take off the Mando helmet, or you can't take off any helmet. And he's like, because you're not wearing your Mando armor, but you still have a helmet on. And he's like, yeah, it's got to be one or the other. But then he goes on some rant as well too.
Yeah, he's like, we all have our bridges we don't want to cross, that kind of thing. And like, where do you draw the line? And like, what breaks you?
Yeah.
And it all culminates in like kind of like a through onto the episode where he's like, I just want to sleep at night, and like, how do I get to that point? And
because he's
be
like,
honest with
whatever makes you able to sleep at night. And he's like, you should be lucky that you can, because not everyone can. And I was like, oh, that's pretty heavy dialogue.
It was giving me shades of DJ in the last Jedi with Finn, where he's like having this like moment where he's just like, gotta be real with you, your philosophy is kind of messed up, and I'm gonna tell you why from my like bounty hunter, criminal smuggler background. And
except from, instead of being delivered by going,
yeah,
he's just going, hey,
yeah, this is the two exact opposite of accents, but there's a through line. There's a through line.
So like, as they're driving this truck though, they start getting raided by they look very similar to the same kind of people that raid the village in chapter 4 last season, like same race. I'm not saying it's the same exact people, but
when I saw it from afar and they said it was pirates, and I could see like their faces were like kind of gray and they're like wearing very colorful clothing, and I was like, oh my god, Hondo.
Wouldn't that be awesome if Hondo showed up though?
Like I thought they were gonna do it for a minute, and then they got in front, and I was like,
Mando.
Yeah,
can you imagine Hondo and Bill Barr? Those accents are the same.
They'd both be, hey, who's you? Hey, Mando.
I want Hondo in this show so bad.
Yeah,
like,
so
when you don't think about, but you need it. He's got to come.
So this is when I think Jackson, you said your brother dubbed this as Mando Fury Road.
Yeah,
and it's when they're rolling down in this truck and they're getting raided by the pirates. So Mando gets out of the co-pilot seat and gets up on top so he can start fighting these pirates off. And there's an action set piece here where they're rolling down Bill Burr's flooring it, so they're flying and they're trying to outrun these pirates, and Mando's fighting them off, and he's struggling because, as we've established,
they've also got the thing coming up where like, oh, is the materials gonna explode?
Yeah. So like Mando's getting his butt kicked. He's kicking some butt, going back and forth. At one point they put a thermal detonator into where the explosive stuff is, and then Mando picks up and throws it. And it has like that awesome camera zoom in on the one bad guy when he's like, and it like zooms in, then it blows up. And then like you think everything's all hunky dory, but then they continue pressing on. So
yeah, they all show up and they all just light thermal detonators. You're like, are you serious? Like you're all gonna throw those at him? Okay.
Yeah, so they get there in like the nick of time, and then all these Imperial troopers come out and just like mow down these pirates or whatever, and like the Imperials are like cheering when they get there. It's like they've saved the world basically. And then it gets into like they're in like a cafeteria or something, like a mess hall. That's the term I'm looking for.
They're all very awkward. They're just trying to walk in, not look weird, but they definitely look very weird.
Yeah, they're like trying to play it cool, and Bill Burr's like, all right, I'm gonna just like lean against this wall like I'm being cool.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you go do your thing. There's the terminal over there. And so he like gives Mando the key or whatever, and Mando goes over to this terminal, and he's got the helmet on or whatever, and there's like these Imperial officers sitting from a side, and they're like watching him. And then so like this like facial thing goes, and Mando's sitting there, and they're just like, facial scan not recognized. So then it's like system shutting down in 10 seconds, and there's this countdown here. And then without hesitation, Mando takes his helmet off, because again, that's how strong his relationship for Grogu is now. He's willing to give up the Beskar suit, and now he's willing to reveal his identity. Gets the facial scan in, which one of my friends brought up the point where it was like, well, how did Mando pass a Imperial facial scan? And I like, probably just because he's Republic, so he just didn't register as an enemy, I'm guessing is what that went off of. But I don't think that was supposed to be the
would anyone have access to his face though? is the thing.
I don't know.
Like
Yeah.
how would they have this face in their database? Which is like
Right.
who knows how this all works? But
Right.
I wasn't mad
I don't
about
think
it.
it was supposed to be that deep. I think that was just like
Yeah.
I think it was supposed to be like he revealed his face for
Yeah.
Grogu. Um, but then he gets the cornets that he wants or whatever, and he just looks. Pedro did such a good job of acting in this scene because he looks so visibly uncomfortable having his face out in the open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he looks like, I don't know how to say, he looks like hurt or almost or something, or like he's like full of
You look
shame.
vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerable. That's the word. Yeah. So like while he's doing this or whatever, one of the Imperial officers finally speaks up and is like, "Hey, trooper, what's your designation?" And he's like, transport." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Transport co-pilot." And he's like, No. I'm talking about your TK number." And then there's like that moment there where like you think the Imperial officer is gonna have like that gotcha moment, and then Bill Burr comes out of nowhere, and he's like, "Oh, that's TK 51 something something something, and I'm TK whatever." Where we just delivered that last batch of explosives, and he's like, "Yeah, you guys are the only ones that were able to get your shipment to deliver here today, so let's celebrate with a drink." And then and this was like one of the highlights of the episode for me, is this dialogue exchange that they have here while they're having a drink, and the Imperial officer is kind of talking about how like the Empire's doing so well because they're like causing all this destruction, and then Bill Burr, being former Imperial, as we've learned, is like, "Yeah, I was part of Operation Cinder," and he was like, my whole blockade got taken out during this, like raid or whatever they were doing." And he was like, "Yeah, those people all died heroes." And he's like, "Yeah, they died heroes, all 10,000 of them." And he's like, "They didn't get to see their family again after that." And he was like, "How's that make them a hero?" And he's like, "Well, they died for the Empire. We're winning." It's like what the Republic has here, they don't have anything. And he's like, "What we're doing is causing chaos." And
the scene gets really tense, but not from the Imperial dude. Like the Imperial dude seems so delusional that he just doesn't even realize like what he's saying at all anymore, and he doesn't even realize how upset Bill Burr clearly is at this moment.
He's
like
actually
very
really
clear,
good
like,
in this scene too.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm like, oh no, but also like, I get it, and this is good and interesting.
Yeah, he sold me on his character here.
Yeah, I will give Bill Burr credit. I was making fun of his accent, but he showed some good acting chops in this episode, to be honest. I never saw that movie that he's in with Pete Davidson, but I did hear he was really good in it.
The King of Staten Island.
Yeah. But yeah, so like DJ, like you said, this does get very tense, but it's like from Bill Burr's side of the conversation. Like you can tell he's to his breaking point that he was talking to Mando about on the truck drive. And this guy is like, I'm very curious to see as this episode's gone out, internet discourse will be, because like this line of dialogue I'm going to quote here, and I made sure to quote it word for word when I rewatched it, is such a perfect, juicy Imperial line to say, because it lines up with the same metaphor of how the Imperials in the original trilogy were a metaphor for the United States Army or the Republicans, basically. And this is also such a thing too, because the Imperial officer leans in and he says, "Everyone thinks they want freedom, but what they really want is order. And when they realize that, they're going to welcome us back with open arms." And if you live in America or have been following American politics, what did Trump campaign on his entire re-election campaign? Law and order. So I was like, that is a perfect line of dialogue to have an Imperial say. So well done, Rick.
Yeah,
it's very good.
It also just perfectly gels with like everything that's been going on with Imperials post episode 6 in the show so far. It just it feels all, there's a good through line they got going here.
The belief that like they should be and deserve to be in charge, and they're just waiting for it to come back.
Yeah,
it's like pretty haunting.
Yeah, and the line delivery from this actor, like like that should nominate him for an Emmy just for that line. Like he
See,
could not have delivered it any.
one thing I couldn't tell about his acting was I couldn't tell if he knew what was going on. Like, was he so dumb that he didn't know that Mando and Mayfield were doing stuff? Because I feel like he called them over to like call them out and like try to mess with them and like get some information out of them. I couldn't tell if he was like he knew what was going on or not.
I think that was part of like the tension,
the mystery,
building.
yeah.
Like I think he was
Maybe
just
that was
like that. I think he was just that arrogant.
Yeah,
but just like the way the scene's framed builds that, because you do kind of have like that antsiness to it, like when you're watching it. You know what I mean?
Also,
yeah,
in
very
the
good.
scene, one last thing on this one, I liked how I think this is the first mention in live action of Operation Cinder. I want to say.
I can't.
I don't think they've mentioned it in this show yet, which is interesting
if they had or
like,
not.
That's such a pivotal point that I think is like has to kind of be known like going in the future of this show, and like the other like Rangers of the New Republic definitely has to mention that. So it was interesting to like finally introduce it as a concept.
Which was first mentioned in DJ's favorite canon book. Yes, you are. You're going to read it.
I'm never going to read after.
I'll get there. I'll get you eventually. You'll break. No. But yeah, so like right after this line is delivered, basically Mayfield decides he's at his breaking point and shoots the Imperial officer. Yeah. And he starts taking out all the other troopers that are there. So Mando is like, "Oh, all right, we're doing this." So he picks a gun up. He starts taking people off, and then Mayfield's just like, "I won't tell anyone I saw your face." So Mando puts the helmet back on, and then they break out through the window and they start crawling out to the outside of this building. And that's when Cara Dune and Fennec are waiting from a cliff top, and they see them, so they start sniping Imperial soldiers from the outside to help break them free. And then Fennec radios the Slave One, and it's like, "They're out. That's your time to move." And he's like, "On it." So then he starts his ship up, and he's flying out there because he's going to pick them up. And they fight their way up to the top of the building, and they get a nice
good fight scene.
Yeah, good fight scene, good action, well shot, and they get a nice pickup from Boba Fett, and they fly off from there. But as they're flying away, there's some I think is it before he blows up the stuff or after? I think it's after. So like Mayfield takes the long rifle and shoots like the stash of radium or whatever that they have, and blows up the whole
windows
thing.
Open.
And like it cuts to Cara, and she's like, "Nice shot." And then it cuts back to the plane or whatever, and he like turns around and looks at Mando, and he's just like, "I want to be able to sleep tonight." And I was like, "Oh, so that story came full circle to him, is he wouldn't have been able to sleep knowing that those people were alive still, basically." So like,
it was also like he delivered this, and if I remember correctly, the Imperial officer talks about, "Oh yeah, we can use this to really do some evil stuff," or something like that. I can't remember.
It's like he's got to get rid of it.
Yeah, and so after they blow this up, though, there's 2 TIE fighters that come out after the Slave One, and this was the moment that I was waiting for. And this is when Boba's like, "Oh, we got company," and then he just drops the seismic charge, and then we get that oh so glorious noise. Everything that I wanted out of that. It was perfect. It's such a good sound. I just love that sound so much. But
it gave me PTSD for playing Battlefront 2, the Starfighter Assault, because that when people were piloting Slave One and use that, it's so overpowered. It's terrible.
Oh, really?
I hate it. Yeah, can't stand that.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have the seismic charge back. That was good fan service.
Yeah, that was fun.
So they take care of the TIE fighters, and they land, and they're having like an exchange. And then like Mando comes out of the ship and goes up to Cara Dune, and she's like, "Oh, it's a shame that Mayfield died in the explosion." And he's like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And
I'm right here.
Yeah,
I didn't die.
And Mando's like, "Yeah, it's a shame." And she's like, "I guess I'll have to put on my report that he died in the explosion fire and was never seen again." And he's like, "Oh, so can I leave? Can I start walking here?" And Mando gives him like the thing like this, so he starts walking, and he's just basically like, "All right, well, thanks." And just takes off into the woods.
I was
thought it was-
surprised
I
that he
thought he
didn't
would've
just
stuck
join the crew.
around.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
straight up in there,
Yeah.
just like when they were saying the whole thing, I was like, oh, he's just gonna be part of the crew. Like I'm kind of
Yeah.
in. Like, yeah, I liked him in this episode.
Yeah, he did sell me on his character. I was really questioning why he would be the
Yeah.
one out of anyone that they brought back, but
Yeah. I guess he can't join it full time though, because this is clearly like a cameo. This was like a cameo season 1, and then
Yeah.
him and Rick are boys, so they brought him back. But
yeah,
I could see
the
him showing up
boys, you
again.
know?
Yeah, I could see him showing up again next season.
Yeah,
Just
well, yeah,
randomly.
funny that he just like went off into like the jungle
he just
of
walked
this
away.
random planet.
Yeah, like
Harry-
they don't even know the planet or
Yeah,
anything.
like,
but
you're not gonna give him a ride to, like, I don't know, Coruscant,
at least take him
Alderaan.
to Navarro or
Yeah,
something.
take him to Navarro and I'm
Yeah,
something. I don't know.
maybe he'll become one of the Rangers of the New Republic.
Mm.
But yeah, so then after he like walks into the woods, Kara like looks at Mando and she's just like, "So did you get the coordinates to Gideon's ship?" And he's like, "Yep." And she's like, "So what's our next move?" And I was like, "Ah, she said our. That means she's gonna be in next week's episode
Yeah,
too."
she's in the
But-
finale.
And then he's like, "Let's roll." So they get in the ship and they start taking off. And then there's a sick wipe cut to Gideon's ship, and that's when I can't remember what happens on Gideon's ship.
They get the video call.
Oh,
where
that's
Mando,
right. They-
Mando
Yeah.
repeats the line
Yeah.
from season 1 where he's like, "I
Yeah.
have something you have something I want," or something.
And
I did not like this scene.
and I want
did
it
not like
more than
this.
you could imagine, or something
Yeah,
like that.
It's
They-
very weird.
awkward.
He's
Very-
like he
it
he
didn't-
like drops him like a hand. He's like, "Yo, I'm coming for you." Also, I love my kids.
yeah.
It didn't feel very in character for Mando because he's so reserved, and then he's just like, I'm gonna send this Zoom call to Moff Gideon, tell him how much I love my son.
He's going full dad mode.
Yeah.
Send him a video, and he's just like, "Where's my son?"
He's the
Oh.
dad knocking on the door of the other dad, where he's like, your son, like, this bruise on my son, that's his fault. Like, that's basically
Yeah.
what he's doing. He's going to door to door. He's like, who did this to my son?
He's
Basically.
Mel Gibson's character in Ransom. I know you haven't seen that movie, but
No.
his child gets kidnapped, so he takes it upon himself to go save him.
Hmm.
You mean
Save her.
like
it's his
Taken?
daughter. Yeah, well, Taken
Like-
was basically Ransom. But,
Every other movie that does that.
yeah, but so that's basically where we're at now. So
One
Yeah,
thing, one random thing I just thought of. They have his face now, I would think. Do you think that could be a player in the next episode, that he's going to hold that over him? That, like,
I don't know.
this, because in theory he scanned it into an Imperial thing. Like, Moff Gideon could probably look like this base just blew up. What happened in the last 30 minutes there, and
Oh,
find
that's
his
true.
face? Like,
Oh, I
you can
completely
see how
forgot
that could
about the
all-
brown eyes line too.
yeah,
Bill Burr was like, "Yeah, his nickname's Brown Eyes," you know. The
He's got
brown-eyed
brown
girl.
eyes.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like that could become a plot point in the next episode, maybe season 3 even. Who knows?
Yeah. But yeah, so that's how the episode ends though. I just, there was good moments, there's good dialogue, good action. It's just this episode didn't do enough. Like, it was over a half
Mm.
hour with one action set piece where the only plot moving forward that they did was they got the course to his ship.
That's
Really
To
just
me, the
the
mask
show.
taking off. Like, to
I
me,
know,
that's
but,
the
like-
mask is the big thing of the show.
Yeah, that coming off too, that was a big thing.
Like, that's
did,
huge
Did
to me.
his helmet come off in episode 7 of last season too?
It came off in episode 8, I think, and
Was
it
it
was only a
episode
droid that saw it.
Yeah, but I just didn't remember if it was 7 or 8 when that came
Yeah.
off last season. But
And it comes off briefly in episode 4 when he's eating at that planet.
Oh right, yeah.
This
he puts
episode
it
gave me
down.
major episode 4 vibes. It feels like the successor to that one in a way, where it's like, this is kind of people digging into like what his creed actually means to him,
Yeah.
and this is like the next phase where he's like, you know what, I have to take this off. So it was good character development on that part, but
So let me take the ball and punt it down to Jackson. Jackson, what do you think of this episode and all that?
Yeah, I actually like this episode quite a bit. I know I've been pretty vocal throughout the season of just like, hey, pick a direction and stick to it. Are we telling this story intensely, or are we just doing random stuff? But I think in terms of like an episode without a lot of capital A plot, I think this is the most like one of the richer episodes in terms of like character, dialogue, and we even get some pretty cool like Imperial lore in this episode for an Operation Cinder. And I do like whenever you get to see kind of like an Imperial officer talking about how like wild all the wild stuff he believes in. So yeah, I actually like this one quite a bit. I thought the action was interesting too, driving the truck. And then even when like the interactions between Mayfield and Mando, I thought were really interesting. So I actually liked this one a decent amount. However, contextually in the events of 8 episode season, and this is episode 7, I can see how that could be a little underwhelming, and in ways it is still for me. Where would I rather a 2-part episode of like the finale? Yes, but I think this is a pretty good. This ranks up there in terms of episodes that like maybe doesn't push things forward.
To me, and kind of what I reckoned with since the Ahsoka episode, really reeling off of like kind of our lukewarm reception to that. For me, the entire season of this show has been that to me. Like people talk about like I just don't agree with like the idea that the Ahsoka episode and the last episode like actually push the plot forward in significant ways that the other episodes weren't, in my opinion. Like I just don't, because like if you don't know those characters, like you don't even know what they're pushing forward. And what they are pushing forward is a lot of stuff we knew, like with like Thrawn and Ahsoka, and like things that like we figured like these are gonna end up being happening. So to me, this episode doesn't feel that different. It's just it doesn't have the hype moments of those episodes. This entire season to me has been like slowly building up Mando's character through Monster of the Week style stuff, but the other ones just had more hype behind them because it was Bo-Katan and Snoke and Ahsoka and Boba Fett. And to me, this one didn't feel much different, except it was newer characters, and they sold me on these characters. So I really like this episode. So I don't know. It is. I think it was a weird coloration where, like, if I got up at 5 a.m. and watched this, I think I would have had a much different tone. But the fact that Will, the first thing I see in the morning is a text from Will. It's just like, episode was bad. I'm so okay. And I get home and watch it. I was like, this is great. So I don't know. Part of that's just like how you go into it, what perception you have. Yeah.
You get what you give.
Yeah.
They did sell me on Mayfield on Bill Burr. Like,
yeah.
This episode was much better than the last episode we got from Rick, which was the prison break.
Yeah, this is much better.
Yeah, so this was a lot better effort, a lot better writing and everything. Because like when I rewatched season 1, that episode is aging like milk. Not one that I consider to be a favorite, but like I don't know. I guess I don't think the episode was bad. It was a little better on a second watch. It's just the last 4 weeks have just been like so they've had like a knockout punch in each episode. This one didn't have that knockout punch. This one just had that action moment.
Yeah. It did feel like it was missing something at the end. Yeah. When they went back to Gideon's ship, I was like, we're gonna do something to tie to lead us in, and it just didn't happen. So
yeah. But I mean, next week's the finale. So do you guys think the finale is going to be a long episode? How long do you guys think it'll be?
See it being like 55.
Yeah, I think it could be close to an hour, just because like last season it was like we had a 2-parter, and I feel like there's a lot to squeeze out. Really, even though we think we all know it's going to end on a cliffhanger, I think there's still a lot that's going to happen.
Well, last season not only ended on a cliff or was a 2-parter. Episode 8 was an hour long.
Right.
So
I would expect that again.
Yeah. Of course it was the speculation about how like there's that big shift that's supposed to happen with the Mandalorian when Pedro stormed off set and he's not supposed to be a part of the show anymore. And they were like, well, if this Boba Fett series is filming right now and they didn't announce it, maybe that means Boba becomes the star of season 3
Just
And
saying this to dunk on Grace Randolph.
well, yeah, but it's a dumb report. But then, like, when I sat there and thought about it, I was like, oh man, are we gonna look dumb if Din dies next episode?
No.
Because he's shown by giving up the suit and the helmet, he's willing to do anything for the child now. So maybe he would sacrifice himself. But
No.
and I was like, they're not going to do that. And I was like, they're probably filming Boba Fett as a regular cast member as part of the crew. And they're filming his episodes right now. And people are taking that as he's having his own show.
Yeah. And he's like, there's a flashback on Tatooine, or they go back to Tatooine or something. And someone saw that and threw together a report. Or not, like, I can't remember where that report came from. And I don't want to say like that writer didn't do their due diligence, but wires get crossed easily in this kind of stuff, and broken telephones happen very easily. So I could totally see something like that just accidentally happening.
It's just like how that TikTok person saw last week's episode filming earlier this year, but they thought they were filming a fan film. So I mean, like, you can't really just judge off of those reports right now because they're doing such a good job of keeping everything secret. At least for this show, like, really the only thing that leaked was stuff that the trade reporters were able to, while we were all in lockdown, and that was all they had to do. Was they were like, well, this person's editing the show, I'm just going to call them every day until they eventually answer and give me something. And so I don't know, I just don't see, I just don't think that shift that was alleged supposed to be happening did happen. But
I mean, Pedro was literally acting in the back half of the season.
Yeah,
like we know it was him now.
Yeah,
we saw him without the mask.
And like, it was funny as I saw a reply tweet to hers earlier today, and someone was like, my wife doesn't even like Star Wars that much, and she always complains to me because she can tell when it's not Pedro in the suit. And she's always like, something is off about this. And I was like, that's such a like bot reply.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think next episode's going to be about? Do you think my prediction's still kind of where we're heading, or do you guys have your own speculation?
I don't know if we have more to say really other than what we said last week, because we didn't really, nothing really changed. Regarding that.
They just found where the ship is.
I still think Bo-Katan and Ahsoka are going to show back up. I think that's got to happen.
Yeah, they
I
could.
think we're less likely now that we know Ahsoka's got her own show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe I still think somebody with a lightsaber is going to show up at the end to save the day. Could it be Luke? Could it be Kyle Katarn?
It's not.
Could it be Cal? Could it be Ezra? We're going to have to see next week for The Mandalorian. Any final thoughts on this week's episode, though? There really isn't much to talk about this one.
No,
to be honest.
It was a good episode, in my opinion. So
yeah. A good episode, but not enough, not much conversationally to cover on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Okay. All right. Well, DJ, why don't you go ahead and just let our listeners know where they can find you at online?
You can find me at DJ_Gillard on Twitter.
And Jackson, where can they find you at?
Find me at Jackson W. Wells. Just see me there.
And you can find me on Twitter at Papa Star Wars, and you can find the show on Twitter at Cantina Convo. Make sure if you're not blocked by Gina yet, you're filming your Boo Dune and posting that to our Twitter for us, and using the hashtag Boo Dune. But other than that, we will see you next week for our episode covering the finale of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Hope everything goes well for you for the next week. May the Force be with you.